Welcome everyone. There's a poem that I'd like to recite for you now, and it's more than just a poem. It's part of our history. It's a tragedy. It's a love story. It involves a beautiful Waka maiden and her lover, her warrior. It's a poem that's set back in the 1800s, but it's really timeless. It could have happened once, it could have happened 100 times. It's called The Ballad of My Creek. It was written by a remarkable man, someone I'm proud to say that has been a mentor and just like in many ways like a second dad to me. Dan Ottley, D.K. Ottley. The language, the speak, the terms in this poem are the true ones of that day. This is what the people used. This is what the tribes used. And this is what was related through to Mortimer in the mid-1800s, to the Manambar area. And it was written down by John Matthew and published in 1910, called Two Representative Tribes of Queensland. And they detail the Waka Waka and the Kabi Kabi people that lived on either side of this great mountain range where this poem is set. And they would come together during what was known as the Bunya Feast, the Bunya Festival, when the great trees of this region would give up their fruit for the people that lived in the area. So relax and join with me as I relate to you one of the greatest poems that I believe that has been written in this last 50 years in this country. On a cool and lonely afternoon, I searched along my Creek for a bull, in fact, an old red Brahma that I'd not seen for a week. And as I searched for sign or track, an old tale unravelled of others who so long ago down this same creek had travelled. 'Twas a peach tree and a wagtail that brought me first to know. Then suddenly within that ancient place, in present time, I knew it had been so. For strewn on pool and rock, amid the native bloom of a bottle brush's red bud, pink confetti from a flowering wild peach tree, a wedding marked, the other marked their blood. That he was born an eagle hawk was plain enough to see. His straight black hair, his fairer skin, confirmed his frailty. At 1 year and 5, his totem was Dilbai, and to this his mother's clan belonged, the North Wind and the Sky. And his place in tribe was Derwin, he of the kangaroo, a Waka Aborigine, a hunter tried and true. And thus he roamed the Great Divide along Baramba Creek to his ancestral home at Manambar, with tribe now come to seek their feast amongst the bunya nut, for their season was at hand. So hunting back along the stream, thus brought their roving band to where each pool bore a fish, an eel, a duck or platypus, and turkey and wallaby and snake were plenty in the bush. At night he slept alone but for his yellow dogs. They warmed him in the winter months, or he drove 'em off to holler logs. And when he'd cut his kill with flinted knife and eat his meat, he'd lean his spears against a nearby tree and he'd search his feet for thorn or grass nail deep embedded there, or murmur to his clan across a glowing fire, or with a bone knife comb his raven hair. And his gunya home were sheets of bark he from the ironbark tree, and when the night had drowned his fire, from the dark he'd look and see her there amongst his uncle's group, just a-playing with the fire. And oft of late she'd glance his way, then quick down cast her eyes. For new-grown she was promised to a Kabi from the east beside the sea, and, well, she was of his mother's totem, a cockatoo, and an eaglehawk is he. And he, well, he'd been twice betrothed, but ere the pact was made, an old man from the crow for a tree, of whom we're all afraid, had barred his hope with dour threat, and claimed his precedence. His old and barren gin had died, he claimed a new girl there and thence. The second had been stolen in a Kabi raid and fight, and though he'd tracked the marauding band, he'd lost them in the night. Thus she betrothed in promise, and dill by he and she, by grim and certain tribal law, their union could not be. But fires do burn and blood runs hot in youthful, hopeful hearts, and who can say to passion stay, or plot where passion starts? And old gins, not yet watching, saw and took care of what they knew, and the old men sat and scratched and spat and speculated too. Then he had away with the crack of day with his yellow dingo dogs to run the game from the mountain dew to the flats and the reedy bogs, where the ambush hid till the long spears slid from the hands to the old men rue. And it was always he that ran the best, and through father straight and true. But of late he'd run with a heavy foot, and thrown late with a heavy hand. So the old men sought from the crystal quartz, and they tried to understand. Then came the fruits of the bunya crop, all scallop fat and green, and this pact of peace, for this triennial feast, brought all tribes to the scene. There was the Kabi, and the Waka, and the northern Gurang too, and from the west in careful line came the Tarumbul to view, and the northern tribe known as Wakari, like ghosts came drifting down, till as flying fox on a blooming tree were the tribes on the bunya ground. And a sea of talk midst a mass of spears, and the dark ever-searching eyes, and the smell from the nuts as the all waxed fat from the fruit burned in the fires. And the dogs fought, and the children played, and the tempers ebbed and flowed, though they did well to hide their hates and fears, lest it be untimely goad. And they took great care to take naught from there except the fruits of the great scrub trees, and only then from their own marked trees could each take as they pleased. And she, as young girls do, resigned to her mother's choice. But she sighed for him across the fire, and her sigh was her love's soft voice. But her betrothed had been delayed in his tribal trials profound, so she remained with the tribes and the clans on the bustling bunya ground. And the old ones there, though they'd never stare, watched with a hooded eye as they searched the gullies and the creeks about where the nuts would roll and lie. Then, for but a brief sweet moment, on the slopes of Tenkellerman Scrub, there at the bole of a great green cedar tree, the home of the witchetty grub, there breathless, bellies burning, they touched hands and faces at last. Furtively glancing about them, they knelt down in the kangaroo grass. "My aunt is coming," she murmured. "For a moment only I speak. Tomorrow I search for the dillybag reed, alone up in my creek." Then the snap of a twig was a warning, and he vanished to the scrub like a dream. And she, wise in the ways of a woman in love, harked to the cockatoo's scream. Was it a word, now a warning? But she willed it a cry of consent. So she bent to a task in the sunlight, her young heart for the moment content. And then her aunt, strong and stern, drifted to her, saw the grass and the leaves springing back in the soil at the foot of the cedar, saw us writing the cardinal track. "Be aware," she would say to the elders as they sat round the campfire that night. But they showed no response. They just sharpened their spears, which alone will put any wrong right. So the girl, in the way of a woman, slept comforted, hopeful that night. Yet he still aware with his love's mingled fear, sleepless, awaited first light. "I will go to the place where the apple gum leans, where the boopoo is shading the creek. There beneath the botherelm, the bottle brush red, the reed leaf I will seek." Ere grey dawn had its eye in the Manambar sky by Tervingi's great mountain head, that she rose from her rest by her grandmother's side and left camp on a sulphurous tread. How deep were his fears as he gathered his spears, chased his dogs back and made his depart. For the curlew had not spoken yet once in the night to quieten his racing young heart. For 100 dark dreads in his soul made their beds from a dream time of wizards and quartz, and his genetic fear shouted loud in his ear, and it wrestled with love in his thoughts. "She has gone to the north, I will go to the east," in his mind he had reasonably said, but hardly he'd crossed the great Coolbar flats when he cut the sign of an old man Roo's tread. For the Roo was his totem, forget also hers. And the tracks led away to the north. As he pondered perplexed, a curlew flew up, flying northward for all it was worth. Confused, yet confirmed, though breathless, yet still tormented, but tantalized too, he swung to the north and set off at a lope on the trail of the grey kangaroo. Well, the great gums above were mighty and old, and the spear grass sweet laden with dew, and his heart took his head, and he threw down his spears, and he let love tell his feet what to do. To the creek, life is now, life is sweet, and the wagtail is calling down there. And he ran like the wind as his memory dimmed, and he ran with no fear, no care. There he picked up her tracks like small dreams on the ground and followed close at the hope of this wondrous thing they had found. She, up ahead, moved so softly, like a wraith through this hard stony creek, collected no reed, but caressed at the flowers of the bottle brush, florid and sweet. How calmly, how surely she waited, then smelt him, then heard him, then saw her warrior come strong through the rushes, as an eagle hawk skyward might soar. How soft were their steps to each other, like a leaf fall their hands reached to touch. And the word they spoke was Bullaraman, which means that I love you so much. Then she sought in her dilly bag basket and took out a human hairband that she'd woven from her own lovely tresses, and she loved him with each single strand. And drew close and did gently set it upon his now serious brow, till he smiled, then he laughed for a moment. Completion encircled them now. Then he plucked raining bottle brush blossoms from the branches bowed over their heads and showered her head and her shoulders, her face and her lovely young breasts. Bullaraman much over, he whispered. I love you was all he could say. And she, my limb, my Lithnaam, my husband this day. And they lay in the day of their loving, like two snakes in a graceful entwine, and the rocky steep bank reared above them, and it clasped them in memory's sweet shrine. The green grass of the bank was their wonderful bed, but the crow creaked a terrible crawl, and the wagtail, now circling above them, now banked as he saw what he saw. Now the wagtail, chattering and scolding, shook bottle brush down on their backs. For downstream, the old men were creeping. How carefully they followed the tracks. She gasping, lay swooning, heard nothing, saw nothing, smelt nothing, nor knew. He hunter, now hunted, knew nothing, save savour this embrace so new. But the elders were up to the tree now, spears raised and the throw arm held back. Then with quiver the eager spears left them, and with spears there is no turning back. Oh no, but these beautiful bodies, nailed 3 times together then more, for the totem is the ultimate judgment, and the clan is the paramount law. So gasping and bleeding they lay, enshrined in their inflowing death. But he turned his face to his judges. Mayangan, my wife, choking said. And she, from a mouth that was bleeding, smiled a smile of a woman complete, who this morning had been but a child, gasped, Oh, Mayan, my husband so sweet. And the stream ran sad red for a moment in time, and the eaglehawk lifted yonder to the hill. The wagtail yet chattered and flustered and cried, and the old men sat down and were still. Now the peach tree has come from old Europe, by a shepherd he had planted, in fact, and though its roots are now deep in this new soil, its customs of old are intact. So to the song of these long-gone lovers, it has spread sweet confetti around. For the wagtail has told it the story, so yearly it sprinkles the ground. And the bottle brush, still bowed in sorrow, sheds her tears when the wind has a way. And together they tell a sad story, and together they hope a new day. And each year when the bunya fruit has grown fat on the last few high trees, they rustle the reeds as they come, and their voices are soft on the breeze. And the apple gum, ever attentive, leans outward and over the creek, and hushes the breeze and the wagtail to listen, as surely they speak. Bularaman, Bularaman, Ningan. Eternal love, they say. And two eagle hawk live skyward from the ancient bent tree and fly together in triumph away.